Two members of the Maine National Guard ventured to Washington, D.C. with their veteran fathers for a powerful weekend. Keenan Mills has more from Camp Chamberlain in Augusta.
Honor Flight is a non-profit organization with the purpose of sending veterans to reflect on memorials. In late June, two Vietnam veterans with their sons, along with more than 50 other veterans, traveled to the nation's capital to visit the tributes. They say the support they received along the way was something truly unique.
It really was overwhelming seeing just the volume and enthusiasm of the volunteers. Honor Flight itself has a core group of volunteers that make that function, but well beyond those core volunteers, there are additional groups there present to thank the veterans for their service in significant numbers.
Many members of the group were Vietnam veterans who didn't necessarily receive the same support when they originally came home from serving.
One of the things that my dad shared with me when I got back from Iraq, one of the first times, he's like, it strengthens my heart to see you guys get this welcome because we didn't get it. So that's all I really thought about when we were kind of bringing them back through the airport, through Portland, because, you know, I heard one of the veterans over here, this is our welcome home. So it's pretty special.
Colonel Young and Officer Libby have been to D.C. before with their fathers, but this experience was unlike any of those prior trips.
Just a shared group of guys that all went through the same thing, going to their memorial. I think for me, being a veteran myself, that's what was special about it. And then having my father there, and a man that I've idolized my whole life, you know, so that was super special.
Traveling as a group with people they loved, a lot of the veterans left the experience different people than they were before the weekend.
Once on ground, seeing the support that was present and then the shared camaraderie with, I think across the board, all the veterans, including my father, really changed their perspective and how they were absorbing each of the moments together as a team.
Keenan Mills, WABI TV5 News, Augusta.